On the evening I turned 30, my mother and father organized a gathering with 200 family members, though the purpose was far from celebration. They intended to publicly cast me out. My mother ascended to the platform and tore apart my childhood photographs from the projection display. My father thrust a weighty leather folder into my hands containing an itemized invoice totaling $400,000, claiming it represented every penny squandered on my upbringing. "Repay this sum or vanish from our lives permanently," he spat before the assembled crowd. My younger sister snatched my vehicle keys from the surface, giggling as she announced that our father had already transferred ownership to her that very morning. They had even arranged for my employer to travel there and terminate me on the spot while I stood motionless. I departed into the downpour without uttering a single syllable. They believed they had demolished me. They believed they had disposed of the family embarrassment. Yet 4 days later, when they were desperately calling me 80 times daily, pleading for compassion, they understood they had committed the gravest error of their existence. This is my account. The sparkling chandeliers of the Obsidian Charlotte's most prestigious event space blazed with blinding intensity. The atmosphere carried notes of lavish fragrance and roasted fowl. 200 guests occupied tables adorned with midnight silk. These were my relatives, my father's commercial associates, the elders of Providence Fellowship Church, and the prominent figures of Charlotte's affluent African-American community. I positioned myself near the entrance wearing my modest charcoal suit from the office, clutching my handbag, sensing the gaze of every individual in the venue searing into me. Not a single person was smiling. My mother, Millicent, commanded the elevated stage. She appeared magnificent, yet terrifying in an amber designer gown that exceeded my yearly rent and cost. She gripped a microphone in one hand and an oversized framed photograph in the other. It was my college graduation portrait, the one capturing my hopeful smile, my naive belief that sufficient effort would finally earn their affection. Welcome everyone to what should have been a celebration. Millicent's voice resonated through the speakers, smooth as silk, yet frigid as winter. We have assembled here tonight to acknowledge 3 decades since Serafina entered our existence. However, rather than a birthday, my husband and I have determined this will be a purification. We are excising the malignancy from this family once and for all. The room fell into deathly silence. Several attendees gasped, though most simply observed with morbid curiosity. My mother elevated the photograph above her head. For 30 years, we have tolerated inadequacy. Millicent continued, her eyes locking onto mine across the space. We have tolerated a daughter who refuses matrimony, refuses to present herself as a proper lady, and refuses to elevate herself to our standard. Observe her standing there in that inexpensive synthetic suit, while her sister Cordelia shines. Serafina is a blemish on the reputation of Bishop Aldrich and First Lady Millicent. Tonight we cleanse it. With a violent gesture, she smashed the framed photograph against the podium's edge. Glass exploded and cascaded onto the stage. She ripped the image from the shattered frame and tore it repeatedly, scattering the fragments across the floor like confetti. "That girl no longer exists to us," she proclaimed. I remained motionless. I did not weep. A peculiar numbness spread through my limbs, a frigid clarity I had never experienced before. My father, Aldrich, approached the microphone next. He was an imposing, towering figure, a community pillar, a man who sermonized about generosity each Sunday while dressed in $3,000 attire. He carried a substantial leather-bound dossier. He descended the stage stairs and marched directly toward me. The crowd parted for him like biblical waters. He halted mere inches from my face. I could detect his premium cologne mingled with the subtle hint of cognac he had been consuming. He thrust the heavy dossier against my chest. I caught it instinctively. "Open it, Serafina," he commanded, his voice thundering without amplification. I opened the binder. It contained an Excel spreadsheet spanning hundreds of pages. "This represents an invoice," Aldrich announced to the room, pivoting to address his audience. $400,000. That is the expense of your existence. I have calculated every cent. The orthodontic work you required at 12. The fuel costs for transportation to school. The nourishment you consumed. The garments on your back. The tuition for that worthless accounting degree you utilized for a dead-end position. I even incorporated inflation and interest. He leaned closer, his voice descending to a threatening growl. You have been a leech, Serafina. You reside in a hovel. You operate a vehicle I financed, and you humiliate us. If you desire liberation from this family, you reimburse us. Every single cent. Transfer the funds or never speak our names again. Consider this your emancipation invoice. I examined the figures. He had literally charged me for the water bill from 1998. He had charged me for my own birthday confections. It was deranged, it was vicious, and it was precisely who he was. I met his gaze. His eyes were unyielding, anticipating my breakdown, my pleading, a spectacle he could exploit to portray me as the volatile, ungrateful offspring. Is that everything, Father? I inquired, my voice unwavering. He appeared startled by my composure. No, that is not everything. From the table to my left, my younger sister Cordelia rose. She was 27, radiant in a crimson silk dress. Her phone raised as she broadcast the entire event live to her 2 million followers. She approached the table where I had placed my car keys upon arrival. She retrieved them, dangling them before my face. You won't require these anymore, sis, Cordelia said, her voice saturated with manufactured sympathy for her audience. Daddy transferred the Mercedes title to me this morning. Happy birthday to me, I suppose. She laughed, a tinkling, merciless sound. Garrison, my brother-in-law, stepped beside her. He was attractive in a slick, untrustworthy manner, the type of man who smiled with his mouth but never his eyes. He wrapped an arm around Cordelia's waist. It's somewhat outdated, Garrison sneered, examining me dismissively. But it will serve perfectly for transporting my Great Danes to the veterinarian. The rear leather is already ruined anyway, correct, Serafina? Just like your career. Return my keys, Cordelia, I said, extending my hand. That vehicle is registered under my name. Correction, Cordelia smirked. It was registered to the family trust, which Dad controls, and he signed it over to me at 9 this morning sharp. You're walking home tonight. Or you could summon a rideshare if you can afford one with that pathetic salary of yours. The humiliation was a physical burden pressing upon my chest. They had orchestrated this. Every detail, the venue, the audience, the invoice, the vehicle. They wanted to strip me bare, but they weren't finished. From the shadows near the kitchen entrance, a man stepped forward. My stomach plummeted. It was Mr. Whitmore, the managing partner of the mid-sized accounting firm where I had worked for the past 5 years. He appeared uncomfortable, perspiring in his suit, avoiding my eyes. Mr. Whitmore? I asked. Why are you here? My father clapped Mr. Whitmore on the back, a heavy possessive gesture. Mr. Whitmore has something to share with you, Serafina, Aldrich said, grinning like a predator. Go ahead, Whitmore. Tell her. Mr. Whitmore cleared his throat, studying the floor. Serafina, effective immediately. Your employment with Whitmore and Associates is terminated. Why? I asked. My performance evaluations are flawless. Your father? Mr. Whitmore stammered, glancing nervously at Aldrich. Your father, who is our largest investor, has brought to our attention some irregularities, concerns about embezzlement. Embezzlement? I repeated. You know I handle the basic audits. I don't even have access to the corporate accounts. We don't have evidence yet, Mr. Whitmore said quickly, reciting a script, but the allegation alone from a man of Bishop Aldrich's reputation. We must protect the firm's standing. Security has already cleared your desk. Your belongings are outside on the curb. I looked at my father. He was beaming. He hadn't merely severed ties. He had ensured I would have no means of survival. He wanted me shattered, impoverished, and crawling back to him so he could reject me again. So that's everything, I asked, surveying the room. The 100 guests were staring, some whispering, some recording on their phones. Not a single person defended me. Not my aunt, whom I had nursed through chemotherapy. Not my cousins, whom I had tutored without charge. No one. They were all purchased and controlled by Aldrich and Millicent. You have nothing remaining, Serafina. My mother shouted from the stage, her voice reverberating. You are nothing without us. Now take your invoice and remove yourself from my sight. You reek of failure." I examined the heavy binder in my hands. $400,000. I closed the binder with a sharp snap. The sound echoed in the silent room. I looked at Cordelia dangling my keys. I looked at Garrison smirking. I looked at Mr. Whitmore wiping perspiration from his forehead. And I looked at my parents standing tall in their delusion of authority. I did not scream. I did not weep. I did not beg. "Accepted," I said simply. The confusion on my father's face was instantaneous. "What did you say?" I said, "Transaction accepted." I replied. I tucked the binder under my arm. "You have presented your invoice. I will process it." I turned on my heel. "Wait," Cordelia yelled, disappointed by my lack of tears. "You're not going to say anything? You're just going to walk away? You're walking home in the rain, you loser." I didn't stop. I walked through the tables, head elevated, past the staring eyes of the people who had claimed to be my family. I pushed open the heavy double doors of the obsidian and stepped into the night. It was pouring rain, a torrential Charlotte thunderstorm. I saw my cardboard box of office supplies sitting in a puddle on the curb, dissolving into mush. My nameplate was floating in the gutter. I stood there for a moment, allowing the rain to soak my cheap charcoal suit. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of wet pavement and ozone. I reached into my pocket and retrieved my phone. It was dry. I didn't open the rideshare app. I didn't call a friend to weep. I dialed a number that wasn't saved in my contacts. A number I had memorized 3 years ago. It rang once. "Identify." A distorted mechanical voice answered. "Agent Serafina Caldwell. Clearance level 5. Authorization code Omega 70. Voice print confirmed." The machine replied instantly. "What is your directive?" "Activate the Omega protocol," I said, my voice cold and hard, blending with the thunder. "Targets: Aldrich Caldwell, Millicent Caldwell, Garrison Monroe. Initiate immediate asset freeze and comprehensive audit. Acknowledged. The hunt begins." I disconnected the call. A dark SUV with tinted windows, which had been idling down the street, pulled to the curb. It wasn't a rideshare. The driver, a man in a sharp black suit, stepped out and opened the rear door with an umbrella. "Good evening, Ms. Caldwell," he said. "We have been awaiting your signal." "Take me home," I said. "Not to the studio apartment my parents believed I inhabited. Take me to the Pinnacle." The driver nodded. "Yes, ma'am." I slid into the leather interior of the armored vehicle, leaving the dissolving box of my old existence in the gutter. As the car pulled away, I watched the glowing entrance of the obsidian fade into the rain. They thought they had stripped me of everything. They didn't realize they had just handed me the weapon I needed to destroy them. The journey to Eastgate was smooth and silent. I watched the city lights streak by on the wet glass. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Cordelia. "Hope you enjoy the walk. Don't worry. I'll take excellent care of the Mercedes. Garrison says, thanks for the vehicle." I didn't reply. I simply forwarded the text to a secure server. We arrived at the Pinnacle, the tallest, most exclusive residential tower in Charlotte. The doorman rushed out, ignoring the rain. "Miss Caldwell, welcome back," he said, opening the door. "We didn't expect you tonight." "Plans changed, Thaddeus," I said, stepping into the golden light of the lobby. I took the private elevator to the penthouse level. The doors opened directly into my apartment. It wasn't a home. It was a command center disguised as a luxury residence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. The furniture was Italian minimalist and expensive, but the centerpiece of the room was the wall of monitors on the east side. I threw the soggy charcoal blazer onto the floor. I kicked off the scuffed pumps my mother despised. I walked to the wall safe hidden behind a piece of modern art. I spun the dial. Click. I placed the soaking wet leather binder, my father's $400,000 invoice, inside the safe. Right next to it sat 3 other thick files. File 1, Providence Fellowship Church, Charity Fund, Embezzlement Evidence. File 2, Millicent Caldwell, Offshore Tax Evasion. File 3, Garrison Monroe, Real Estate Ponzi Scheme. I had been constructing these files for 3 years. I was not a low-level accountant at Whitmore and Associates. That was my cover. I was a ghost auditor, a high-level forensic accountant contracted by federal agencies to infiltrate and expose complex financial crimes. My family was my assignment, though I had never intended to trigger the operation. I had held on to hope that they were merely misguided, not malevolent. Tonight, they extinguished that hope. I walked to the main computer terminal and typed in my password. The screens flared to life, streams of data scrolling rapidly. Bank accounts, routing numbers, hidden shell corporations. My phone chimed with a notification from my secure bank app. Deposit received $2 million. Reference, Case 902, successful prosecution. My bonus from the last cartel investigation had just arrived. I walked to the kitchen island and poured a glass of Domaine de la Romanée Conti. I took a sip, the rich wine warming my chest. I looked at the rain battering the glass, gazing down at the city where my parents were currently laughing, drinking champagne, and celebrating my destruction. They demanded $400,000. I would deliver it to them. But first, I was going to seize everything they possessed. I sat down at the keyboard. Let's examine how much that land behind the church is truly worth, I whispered to the empty room. The following morning, the afterglow of their victory was still fresh for my family. But for me, the war had just commenced. At 10 in the morning, my family was gathered at my parents' mansion in Eastgate. I could see them through the hacked webcam on Garrison's laptop, which he had foolishly left open in the living room. They were eating brunch, mimosas, catered eggs, laughter. So, Garrison said, his mouth full of toast, now that Serafina is gone and Whitmore fired her, she's got no income. She'll be desperate within a week. She'll come crawling back. Millicent laughed. And when she does, we make her sign the rights to her portion of grandfather's land trust. We need that signature to sell. That was their scheme. My grandfather had left a small plot of land behind the church. They thought it was theirs, but grandfather had placed it in a trust where all grandchildren had to sign off to sell. They needed me desperate, so I would sign for pennies. We don't need her signature, Garrison said, wiping his mouth. I've got a guy who can forge it. But first we sell the land to my development company for a pittance. Then we flip it to the investors for $10 million. $10 million. Aldrich whistled. The Lord is good. I watched on my monitor, sipping my coffee. $10 million. That was the game. My phone rang. It was my attorney, Mr. Sheffield. Miss Caldwell, are we ready to execute Phase 1? Do it, I said. 30 minutes later, on my screen, I saw the doorbell ring at my parents' house. A man in a suit walked in. It wasn't the police. It was the family lawyer, Mr. Harrington, looking pale and terrified. Aldrich, Millicent. We have a problem, Harrington said, not accepting the mimosa offered to him. What is it? Aldrich asked, annoyed. I just went to the courthouse to prepare the paperwork for the land sale. Harrington stammered. We can't sell the land. Why not? Garrison demanded. Serafina hasn't signed yet, but we can pressure her. It's not about the signature, Harrington said, wiping sweat from his brow. The land isn't in the family trust anymore. What do you mean? Millicent asked, standing up. I checked the deed history, Harrington said. 10 years ago, on Serafina's 18th birthday, your father removed the land from the family trust and transferred the deed directly to a single individual. Who? Aldrich shouted. Who owns my land? It's not your land, Aldrich, Harrington said quietly. It's Serafina's. She is the sole owner. She has been for 12 years. The silence in the room was absolute. I watched Millicent drop her glass. It shattered on the marble floor. That's impossible, Cordelia screamed. Grandpa hated her. Apparently not, Harrington said. And there's more. I just received a notification from the city. The owner of the land, Serafina, has just filed a petition to rezone the property. Rezone it to what? Garrison asked, his face draining of color. She's donating it, Harrington read from a paper in his hand. To the city, for the construction of a permanent homeless shelter and sewage treatment expansion facility. A sewage plant, Millicent shrieked. Right next to the church. It will destroy the property value. It will smell, and it means Garrison's development deal is dead, Aldrich realized, sinking into his chair. I leaned back in my chair in the penthouse, watching the chaos unfold on my screen. They thought I was destitute. They thought I was walking in the rain. I picked up my phone and dialed my parents' home landline. On the screen, I saw Aldrich stare at the ringing phone. He picked it up. "Hello," he barked. "Hi, Dad," I said, my voice cheerful. "I'm just calling to let you know I'm working on that $400,000, but I might need to liquidate some assets, like that dusty old plot of land behind the church. It's not worth much, right? Just dirt." "Serafina," Aldrich roared. "You listen to me." I hung up. Phase 1 complete. Now, let's see how they handle the silence. I turned my phone to do not disturb mode. The notifications started rolling in instantly. 5 calls, 10 calls, 20. By noon, it was 50 calls. By dinner, it was 80. I sat in my living room watching the sunset, eating a steak prepared by my private chef. My phone sat on the coffee table, vibrating incessantly like an angry insect. Voicemail from Mom. "Serafina, baby. We were just stressed yesterday. We didn't mean it. Come home. Let's talk about the land." Voicemail from Dad. "You ungrateful brat. You can't do this to the church. Pick up the phone." Voicemail from Garrison. "Look, Serafina, let's cut a deal. I can make you wealthy. Just don't rezone the land. Call me." I took a sip of wine. Wealthy? I thought. Garrison, I could purchase your entire life with my quarterly bonus. I didn't answer. I let them sweat. I let the panic set in. Because they still didn't know the worst part. They were worried about the land. They had no idea that I had already triggered the audit on the church's charity fund. Tomorrow, Cordelia was going to discover that driving a stolen vehicle, even if your daddy handed you the keys, is a felony when the vehicle belongs to a shell corporation registered to the FBI. I checked my watch. 8:02 p.m., time for Phase 2. I opened my laptop and pulled up the GPS tracker for the Mercedes. It was parked outside a trendy nightclub in Midtown. Cordelia was partying, probably flashing the keys to her friends. I opened the remote control app for the vehicle. Engine immobilizer activated. Doors locked. Alarm activated. On my other screen, I pulled up the police dispatch frequency. I picked up my burner phone and dialed 911. "Yes, I'd like to report a stolen vehicle. A black Mercedes. It's currently located at Club Velvet. The driver is a female, late 20s. "Yes, I have the title right here. It belongs to Omega Holdings. No, I did not give permission for anyone to drive it." I hung up and watched the GPS dot. Happy birthday to me. The vibration of my phone against the marble kitchen island was constant. A relentless buzzing that sounded like a hornet trapped in a jar. I swirled the deep red Cabernet in my glass, watching the screen illuminate again and again. 82 missed calls. It had been less than 4 hours since Mr. Harrington dropped the bomb about the land ownership, and my family had gone from treating me like a pariah to hunting me down like I was the last bottle of water in a desert. I sat on a high-backed velvet stool in my penthouse at the Pinnacle, looking out over the Charlotte skyline. The rain from last night had cleared, leaving the city washed clean and glittering in the midday sun. From up here, the cars looked like toys, the people like ants. It was quiet, peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaotic desperation I knew was unfolding in the mansion I used to call home. My phone buzzed again. It was my mother, Millicent. This was her 20th attempt in the last hour. I didn't pick up. I simply tapped the screen to send it to voicemail, then leaned over to listen as her message transcribed in real time on my monitor. "Serafina, baby, pick up the phone." Millicent's voice was breathless, pitched an octave higher than usual, dripping with a sugary sweetness that made my teeth ache. "I know you're upset about last night. We were all just so stressed with the church and the business. You know how your father gets. He didn't mean it, sweetheart. He was just trying to motivate you. Look, I'm making your favorite tonight. Gumbo. The spicy kind you love. Just come home, baby. We need to sign some papers for the trust renewal. Just boring administrative stuff. And then we can be a family again. Please, Serafina. Mommy loves you. I took a sip of wine, letting the rich oaky flavor settle on my tongue. Mommy loves you. The same woman who less than 24 hours ago had ripped my graduation photo in half and called me a stain on the family name. The audacity was almost impressive. She thought I was stupid. She thought she could lure me back into the bear trap with a bowl of gumbo and a few kind words, because she needed my signature to secure her 10 million. The buzzing stopped for 3 seconds, then started again. This time it was Aldrich. I let it go to voicemail. Serafina, this is your father. Aldrich's voice boomed through the speaker, trying for authority but cracking with underlying panic. Stop playing games. You made your point. You walked out. Bravo. Now answer the phone. That invoice I gave you, it was a joke, a parable, like the prodigal son. I was teaching you the value of money, not actually demanding payment. You think I'd charge my own flesh and blood for raising them? Don't be ridiculous. Come to the house. We need to discuss the land behind the church. There are tax implications if we don't update the deed today. Call me back immediately. A joke. A $400,000 joke presented in a leather binder in front of 200 people. He was terrified. I could hear it in the way he rushed his words. He knew that if I didn't sign that land over, his house of cards would collapse. I set my wine glass down and pulled my laptop closer. It was time to respond. Not by picking up, but by setting a boundary so high they would need an oxygen mask to see the top of it. I logged into my mobile carrier's dashboard and navigated to the voicemail settings. I deleted my standard professional greeting. I hit the record button. Thank you for calling Serafina Caldwell, I said into the microphone, keeping my voice flat, professional, and utterly devoid of emotion. I am currently unavailable to take your call as I am working multiple jobs to acquire the funds necessary to pay the $400,000 invoice presented to me by Bishop Aldrich Caldwell. I am taking his demand for repayment very seriously. Please do not leave a message unless you are a debt collector. Have a blessed day. I saved the recording and activated it. Then I sat back and waited. It took exactly 2 minutes. My phone lit up. Aldrich was calling again. I watched the screen, imagining him on the other end. Phone pressed to his ear, expecting to hear my voice, or a standard greeting. I imagined the color draining from his face as he heard my new message. The phone stopped ringing abruptly. He had hung up. Then a text message popped up on my screen. You ungrateful brat. Change that voicemail now. You are mocking me. I laughed. It was the first time I had genuinely laughed in months. Another text, this time from Cordelia. Sis, stop being weird. Dad is freaking out. He's throwing things. Just come home. Garrison says he can get you a new car, a better one. Just come sign the papers. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had the power now. Every second of my silence was a tightening of the noose around their necks. They were sweating. They were scrambling. And they were realizing, perhaps for the first time, that the quiet, mousy accountant they had bullied for 30 years was actually the one holding the keys to their kingdom. Meanwhile, across town in the sprawling living room of the Caldwell estate, the atmosphere was toxic. I switched my monitor view to the hacked webcam feed from Garrison's laptop again. Aldrich was pacing back and forth, his face a dangerous shade of purple. He threw his iPhone onto the sofa. She is mocking me, Aldrich roared, loosening his tie as if he couldn't breathe. Did you hear that? She said an auto reply, saying she's working to pay off the invoice. She is using my own words against me. She knows, Millicent whispered, sitting on the edge of her seat, wringing her hands. She knows about the land. Harrington must have told her years ago. She's been waiting for this. She doesn't have the guts for this. Garrison spat, pacing near the window. Serafina is a follower. She's weak. Someone is putting her up to this. Maybe she got a boyfriend. Maybe she hired a lawyer. We have to find her, Aldrich said, stopping his pacing. We cannot let her rezone that land. If the city approves that homeless shelter, the property value drops to 0. 0. And the developers walk away. I tried tracking her again, Garrison said, looking at his phone. The GPS still says she's at the Pinnacle. But that doesn't make sense. You can't even get into the lobby of the Pinnacle without a keycard or an invite. Security is tighter than the White House. Maybe she's working there, Cordelia suggested, scrolling through Instagram, looking bored but anxious. Maybe she's a maid or a dog walker for rich people. We went there, Aldrich said. We drove by an hour ago. The doorman wouldn't even tell us if a Serafina Caldwell was on the guest list. He threatened to call the police if we didn't move the car. My heart did a little flip of satisfaction watching them. They had tried to storm my castle and had been turned away at the gate. We need a different approach, Garrison said, his eyes narrowing. His voice dropped lower, the slick salesman tone replaced by something gritty and dangerous. The nice way isn't working. The guilt trip isn't working. We need leverage. What kind of leverage? Millicent asked, looking nervous. Physical leverage, Garrison said. We need to get her in a room, just her and us. No phones, no lawyers, no doormen. If I can get 5 minutes alone with her, I can get that signature. I don't care if I have to guide her hand myself. You can't hurt her, Aldrich said quickly. Though I noticed he didn't say no. He just said, can't. I'm not going to hurt her, Garrison said, waving his hand dismissively. I'll just persuade her. Fear is a great motivator. But first we have to find exactly where she is. The Pinnacle is a big building. I know a guy, Garrison continued, pulling a second burner phone out of his pocket. Ex-cop, private investigator. He does dirty work for the real estate firm when we have stubborn tenants who won't evict. He can find out which unit she's in. He can find out who she's staying with. Do it, Aldrich ordered, turning his back to look at the portrait of my grandfather. Pay him whatever he wants. Just bring her to me. I watched on my screen as Garrison dialed a number. Yeah, Briggs, it's Garrison. I've got a job. A skip trace. I need you to locate a target. Serafina Caldwell. She's somewhere in the Pinnacle building in Eastgate. I need a unit number. I need a schedule. I need to know when she walks out that door. And Briggs, if you can grab her, grab her. There's a bonus in it for you. I felt a cold chill run down my spine in my warm penthouse. They were escalating. They were moving from emotional manipulation to physical intimidation. Garrison was calling in his thugs. I reached for my keyboard. So you want to play dirty, Garrison? I whispered to the screen. You want to hire a private investigator? Fine. Let's see what your investigator finds when I feed him the breadcrumbs I want him to find. I opened a new window on my computer. I accessed the building's guest registry database, a perk of being the one who audited the building's security firm last year. I created a fake entry. Guest name, Serafina Caldwell. Unit 402. Status, temporary staff via cleaning crew. Unit 402 was not my penthouse. Unit 402 was an empty apartment on the 4th floor currently undergoing asbestos removal and heavy renovation. It was a construction zone filled with dust, exposed wires, and hazard tape. I then accessed my digital schedule, the one I knew a low-level PI like Briggs would be able to hack if he tried hard enough. I planted an appointment. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Location: The Haze, high-end coffee shop on Tryon Street. Note: meeting with public defender regarding insolvency. I was giving them a location. I was giving them a time. If Garrison wanted to grab me, he would try it there. A public place, but one where he felt comfortable. He would think I was meeting a cheap lawyer because I was broke. He would think I was vulnerable. He had no idea that the Haze was also the favorite hangout spot for the undercover agents of the Charlotte FBI field office, specifically the Financial Crimes Division. Agents I had worked with for 3 years. Agents who were currently building a RICO case against Garrison's development partners. I picked up my phone and dialed Agent Prescott. Prescott here. Hey, Daniel, I said. It's Serafina. How would you like to arrest a suspect for attempted kidnapping and harassment tomorrow afternoon? I'll even buy you a latte while we wait. I'm listening, Prescott said. I could hear the smile in his voice. I'm setting a trap, I said. My brother-in-law just hired a thug to snatch me. I'm going to serve myself up on a silver platter at the Haze at 2. I need you and the team in the back booth. Consider it done, Prescott said. Do we take them down immediately? No, I said, watching Garrison on my screen as he laughed with my father, thinking he had won. Let them talk first. I want them to admit everything. I want them to demand the signature. I want them to threaten me. I want it all on tape. And then you take them down. Understood, Prescott said. Stay safe, Serafina. I hung up. On the screen, Garrison ended his call. It's done, Garrison told my parents. Briggs is on it. He says he'll have a location by morning. We'll have her by tomorrow afternoon. Get the papers ready, Aldrich. We're going to be wealthy. My mother clapped her hands in delight. Oh, thank goodness, Millicent sighed. I was worried we'd have to cancel the trip to Paris. I closed my laptop. Enjoy your last night of freedom, family, I thought, because tomorrow the bill comes due, and the price has just gone up. I sat at the corner table of the Haze on Tryon Street, sipping a $7 oat milk latte and checking my watch. It was 1:58 in the afternoon. The coffee shop was a sea of beige linen suits, designer handbags, and the soft murmur of Eastgate socialites gossiping about their neighbors. It was the perfect stage for a scene, and my family never missed a cue. 2 tables away, a man in a faded Hornets baseball cap and a hoodie was reading a newspaper. To anyone else, he looked like a construction worker on a break. To me, he was Special Agent Daniel Prescott, the best financial crimes investigator in Charlotte. He caught my eye over the top of his paper and gave a microscopic nod. The trap was set. At exactly 2 o'clock, the heavy glass doors of the cafe swung open. They didn't just walk in. They invaded. My father, Aldrich, led the pack, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my first car. My mother, Millicent, fluttered behind him in a floral dress, looking like she was auditioning for a daytime soap opera. And trailing them were Cordelia and Garrison. Cordelia had her phone raised, recording everything before she even stepped inside. Garrison looked sweaty and nervous, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered rat. They spotted me immediately. I hadn't made it hard. I was sitting right in the center window, sunlight streaming onto my face. Serafina, baby, there you are. My mother shrieked. The entire cafe went silent. Spoons froze halfway to mouths. Conversations died. This was exactly what Millicent wanted. An audience. She rushed toward me, arms wide open, tears already streaming down her face. It was a masterful performance. If I didn't know she was a sociopath, I might have been moved. Oh, thank you, Jesus. We found her. Millicent wailed, throwing her arms around my neck. I stiffened, refusing to hug back. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and desperation. You had us so worried, sweetheart. Why did you run off like that? We love you so much. Cordelia circled us like a shark with a smartphone. Look, guys, we found her. Cordelia narrated to her live stream, her voice dripping with fake concern. My poor sister. She's been having a mental health crisis, but the family is here now. We are going to get her the help she needs. Drop a heart in the chat for Serafina, guys. My father stepped up to the table, looming over me. He tried to look benevolent, but I saw the vein throbbing in his temple. Daughter, he boomed, his voice projected for the back row. Come home. We forgive you. We forgive you for the disrespect. We forgive you for the lies. Just come home and sign the papers, and we can put this whole ugly chapter behind us. Garrison didn't say anything. He just stood by the door, blocking the exit, crossing his massive arms. He was the muscle, the threat. I slowly peeled my mother's arms off my shoulders. I stood up. I smoothed down my blazer. I looked my mother in the eye. You forgive me? I asked, my voice calm and carrying through the silent room. You forgive me for what exactly? For not paying the $400,000 invoice you handed me on my birthday? Or for not thanking you when you fired me from my job? Millicent's smile faltered. She laughed, a nervous tittering sound. Oh, silly, she said, patting my cheek a little too hard. That was just a joke, a misunderstanding. We were just trying to teach you a lesson about responsibility, but we went too far. We admit it now. Come on. The car is outside. Let's go home. I looked at Cordelia, who was zooming in on my face, hoping for a breakdown. Speaking of cars, I said, turning my gaze to my sister. Where is my Mercedes, Cordelia? The question hung in the air. Cordelia stopped chewing her gum. The phone in her hand lowered slightly. What? Cordelia asked, blinking. My Mercedes, I repeated. The one you took the keys to yesterday. The one Dad supposedly transferred to your name. I noticed you didn't drive it here today. I looked out the window at the oversized SUV they had arrived in. Where is it? Cordelia looked at Garrison. Garrison looked at his shoes. My father cleared his throat. That doesn't matter right now, Serafina, Aldrich said, stepping between me and Cordelia. What matters is your safety. The car is safe. It's being detailed. We're getting it cleaned for you. A peace offering. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound that made the barista behind the counter flinch. You are lying, I said. Cordelia bristled. I am not lying, she snapped, forgetting her sweet live stream persona for a second. Why do you care anyway? It's just a car. You can't even afford gas for it. Where is the car, Cordelia? I asked again, my voice dropping an octave. Garrison stepped forward, trying to use his size to intimidate me. Look, Serafina, he grunted. There was a little incident, okay? The brakes were touchy. I took it for a spin last night just to check the engine, and I hit a pole. You hit a pole, I repeated. It was raining, Garrison said quickly. The roads were slick. It's not a big deal. It's in the shop. I'll pay for the repairs. Just sign the land transfer papers and I'll buy you a brand new one. A Porsche. Whatever you want. Cordelia nodded vigorously. Yeah, Garrison accidentally crashed it, she said, gaining confidence. But it was barely a scratch. It's fine. Stop being so materialistic, Serafina. It's just metal. Family is what matters. I looked at them. The greed, the entitlement, the absolute lack of accountability. They truly believed they could take whatever they wanted, break whatever they touched, and talk their way out of it. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I tapped the screen 3 times. That is interesting, I said. Because according to the GPS tracker and the onboard computer logs, the car didn't hit a pole. Garrison's face went pale. The car was immobilized remotely at 2 a.m. Outside of Club Velvet, I continued, looking at the report on my screen. It wasn't damaged in a crash. It is currently sitting in the police impound lot because it was reported stolen. Stolen? Aldrich shouted. Who reported it stolen? I gave her that car. I hold the title. No, Dad, you don't, I said. You held the title to the old Honda I drove in college, but the Mercedes. I bought that myself 3 months ago, and I registered it to Omega Holdings. My company. Your company? Cordelia scoffed. You don't have a company. You file taxes for a living. You make $40,000 a year. I looked at Agent Prescott in the corner. He folded his newspaper and stood up. That is what I wanted you to think, I said to my family. Just like I wanted you to think I was broke. Just like I wanted you to think I was weak. But the truth is, I have been auditing you for 3 years. And that car is federal property used in an undercover investigation. Garrison took a step back. What are you talking about? He whispered. I am talking about grand theft auto, I said. I am talking about unauthorized use of a corporate vehicle. And since you just admitted on a live stream with 2,000 viewers that you took the car and crashed it, you have confessed to a felony. Cordelia looked at her phone. The comments section was scrolling so fast it was a blur. People were asking if this was real. People were tagging the police. You set us up! Cordelia screamed, throwing her phone onto the table. You witch! You set us up! I didn't set you up, I said calmly. I just gave you enough rope. You are the ones who tied the noose. I looked past them toward the door. 2 uniformed officers walked in, followed by Agent Prescott, who flashed his badge. Cordelia Caldwell, Garrison Monroe. Agent Prescott said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. You are under arrest for grand theft auto and destruction of property. Garrison Monroe, we also have a warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud and racketeering. Please place your hands behind your back. The cafe erupted into chaos. Millicent screamed. a high piercing sound that shattered the sophisticated atmosphere. "No, you can't touch him," Aldrich yelled, trying to block the officers. "Do you know who I am?" "I am Bishop Aldrich Caldwell. These are my children. This is a misunderstanding. My daughter is mentally unstable. She doesn't know what she is saying." "Miss Caldwell seems perfectly lucid to me," Agent Prescott said, signaling for the officers to proceed. Garrison tried to bolt. He lunged for the side exit, knocking over a table of iced teas, but he didn't make it 3 steps. A plainclothes officer, who had been sipping an espresso by the door, tackled him to the ground. Handcuffs clicked. Garrison howled in pain and indignation. Cordelia didn't run. She froze. As the officer grabbed her wrists, she looked at me with eyes full of utter betrayal. "Serafina, help me," she begged, her voice trembling. "Tell them it's a joke. Tell them I'm your sister. You can't let them take me to jail. I have a brand deal tomorrow. I can't go to jail." I looked at her. I looked at the sister who had laughed while I walked home in the rain. I looked at the sister who had mocked my job, my clothes, and my life for 30 years. I leaned in close so only she could hear me. "You should have thought about that before you took my keys," I whispered. "And Cordelia, don't worry about the brand deal. I'm pretty sure they don't sponsor felons." They dragged her out. She was sobbing, mascara running down her face, kicking her heels against the floor. Garrison was dragged out behind her, cursing and shouting threats. Millicent collapsed into a chair, hyperventilating. Aldrich stood there shaking, his face a mask of purple rage and terror. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "You did this," he hissed. "You destroyed your family. For a car. For a piece of land. Are you happy?" I picked up my purse. I smoothed my blazer. "I'm not happy, Dad," I said. "I'm just auditing the books. And you are deep in the red." I signaled to the waiter. "Check, please," I said. I paid for my latte. I paid for the broken glass. And then I walked out of the cafe, leaving my parents sitting in the wreckage of their reputation while the sirens wailed in the distance. They thought this was the end. They thought the arrest was the worst thing that could happen. They were wrong. This was just the appetizer. The main course was coming on Sunday, and I couldn't wait to serve it. The interrogation room at the Charlotte precinct smelled like stale coffee and old sweat, a stark contrast to the lavender and money scent of my parents' estate. My sister Cordelia sat hunched over a metal table. Her expensive makeup streaked down her cheeks in jagged black lines, making her look like a raccoon that had been caught digging through the trash. She wasn't live streaming now. They had taken her phone, her purse, and her dignity. I stood behind the one-way glass, watching her hyperventilate. Beside me, Agent Prescott crossed his arms. "She broke in 5 minutes," Prescott said, his voice dry. "She's been screaming for her daddy, her lawyer, and her followers in that order." She also asked if the mugshot lighting could be adjusted. I nodded, my face impassive. "Let me talk to her," I said. Prescott opened the door, and I walked into the small gray room. Cordelia's head snapped up. When she saw me, hope flared in her bloodshot eyes, followed immediately by rage. "Serafina!" She shrieked, jumping up, her handcuffs clattering against the table. Tell them this is a mistake. Tell them the car belongs to Dad. Get me out of here. My skin is breaking out." I didn't sit down. I stood by the door, smoothing the lapel of my blazer. I looked at her, not with hate, but with the clinical detachment of an auditor inspecting a fraudulent ledger. "The car does not belong to Dad, Cordelia," I said, my voice calm. "I told you it belongs to Omega Holdings, a federal shell corporation, and you were caught in possession of it after I reported it stolen. That is grand theft auto. That is a felony. It's a family dispute." Cordelia spat. "Dad gave me the keys. It's a civil matter. My lawyer said I'll be out in an hour." "Your lawyer's an idiot," I said. "But that's not the worst part, Cordelia. The worst part is the hit and run." Cordelia froze. "What hit and run?" she whispered. I placed a folder on the table. I opened it to reveal grainy photos from a traffic camera. They showed the black Mercedes screeching around a corner in the rain at 2 a.m, sideswiping a parked delivery van and speeding off. The car was involved in a hit and run last night. I lied smoothly. The driver fled the scene. Since you admitted on your live stream that you had the keys and were driving the car, and since you were found with the keys today, the police are charging you as the driver, leaving the scene of an accident, property damage, reckless driving. Combined with the theft, you are looking at 5 to 7 years in prison. Cordelia's face went gray. She slumped back into her chair. I didn't drive it last night, she stammered. I didn't. I was at the club. I took a rideshare. Then who drove it, Cordelia? I asked, leaning forward. You had the keys. You bragged about it. Who else had access? Garrison. She breathed. It was Garrison. He asked for the keys. He said he wanted to test the engine. He came back an hour later and said the car was fine. He lied to me. I shrugged. Can you prove that? Because right now the police have a video of you holding the keys and claiming the car is yours. Garrison will deny it. He'll say you stole it. He'll say you're a wild party girl who got drunk and crashed. Who do you think a jury will believe? The businessman or the influencer who live streams her felonies? Cordelia started to cry again. Ugly, gasping sobs. He set me up. She wailed. He totally set me up. Serafina, you have to help me. I can't go to prison. I'll lose my sponsorships. I'll lose my verification badge. I watched her unravel. It was pathetic. She wasn't worried about the crime. She wasn't worried about morality. She was worried about her blue checkmark. I can help you, I said softly. Cordelia looked up, mascara dripping from her chin. How? I can drop the charges, I said. As the representative of Omega Holdings, I can sign a waiver stating that there was a miscommunication regarding the vehicle usage. I can testify that Garrison had access to the spare key. I can make this go away. Cordelia nodded frantically. Yes, do that, please, Serafina. I'm your sister. I held up a hand. I'm not doing it because you're my sister, I said coldly. I'm doing it for a price. A price? Cordelia asked, blinking. I don't have money. Dad has the money. I don't want money, I said. I pulled a chair out and sat down opposite her. I leaned in close. I know Garrison and Dad are moving money, I said. I know they are draining the church charity fund. I know they are planning to sell the land. But Garrison is greedy. He wouldn't just put the money in the family account. He's skimming off the top. He's hiding assets. I need to know where. Cordelia bit her lip. She looked terrified. Dad will kill me, she whispered. Garrison will kill me. Prison will kill you, I countered. And trust me, orange is not your color. Think about it, Cordelia. Garrison crashed the car and let you take the fall. He threw you to the wolves to save himself. Do you really owe him your loyalty? Cordelia's eyes hardened. The fear was replaced by spite. She was a narcissist, and narcissists hate being used. He's a pig, she hissed. He thinks he's so smart, but he's sloppy. Tell me, I said. He has a burner phone, Cordelia said, the words tumbling out. He keeps it in the safe in the pool house, but he's an idiot. He uses the same passcode for everything. 1111. I nodded, urging her to continue. And he's not just skimming cash, she said, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. He's spending it on her. Her who? I asked. The mistress, Cordelia said, a gleam of malice in her eyes. Opal. She's 22. She works at the luxury handbag store in South Park. Garrison has been using the church building fund to buy her Birkin bags. He spent $50,000 last month alone. He brags about it when he's drunk. He says the congregation is paying for his side piece. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was the smoking gun. Embezzlement was one thing, but using church donations to buy Hermes bags for a mistress, that would destroy Aldrich's reputation in the community forever. It would turn the deacons into a lynch mob. Do you have proof? I asked. I have pictures, Cordelia said. I took pictures of his text messages when he was passed out by the pool last week. I was going to use them to blackmail him into buying me a trip to Dubai. But now you're going to use them to stay out of jail, I finished. Where are the pictures? In my iCloud, Cordelia said. My phone is in evidence, but if you have a laptop, I can log in. I stood up and knocked on the glass. Agent Prescott entered carrying my laptop bag. He set it on the table. Log in, I ordered. Cordelia typed in her credentials, her handcuffed hands moving awkwardly. She navigated to her photo stream. And there they were. Screenshots of texts between Garrison and Opal. Photos of receipts. Bank transfer confirmations from the Providence Fellowship Outreach Fund directly to a personal account labeled GM Private. It was a treasure trove. It was the end of Garrison Monroe. I saved everything to my secure drive. I made 3 backups. Okay, I said, closing the laptop. You did good, Cordelia. So, I can go? She asked, hope making her voice tremble. I stood up and signaled for the guard. I will talk to the district attorney, I said. I will tell them I am not pressing charges for the theft, but the hit-and-run investigation takes time. You'll have to stay here tonight. Tonight? Cordelia shrieked. But the gala is tomorrow. I need to get a facial. You're lucky you aren't getting a prison tattoo, I said. Sit tight, sister. Think about your choices. I walked toward the door. Serafina? Wait, Cordelia called out. What about Dad? What are you going to do to him? I paused, hand on the doorknob. Dad is going to have a very bad Sunday, I said. I walked out of the interrogation room, leaving my sister weeping into her hands. I felt no guilt. She had been ready to blackmail her own brother-in-law for a vacation. She had watched me walk into the rain without a second thought. She was a scorpion, and I had just removed her stinger. I met Agent Prescott in the hallway. Did you get it? Prescott asked. I held up the flash drive. Everything, I said. Wire fraud, embezzlement, and a moral scandal that will make the evening news. Garrison bought a mistress $50,000 worth of purses with money meant for the soup kitchen. Prescott let out a low whistle. That guy is done. When do we move? Not yet, I said, checking my watch. Garrison is the muscle, but Aldrich is the head. I need to sever the head. And to do that, I need Millicent. Millicent? Prescott asked. Your mother? She's loyal to the bone. She won't flip. She's loyal to the money, I corrected. She's loyal to the lifestyle. And right now, she thinks Garrison is the golden goose who is going to sell that land and buy her a villa in France. I pulled up the video file on my phone, the one I had just downloaded from Cordelia's cloud, showing the receipts for the mistress. She needs to know that her golden goose is cooking another bird, I said. I opened my email. I composed a new message to Millicent Caldwell. Subject line: Urgent. Garrison's investment portfolio. I attached the photos of the Birkin bags. I attached the text messages where Garrison called Aldrich an old fool, and Millicent a washed-up pageant queen. I attached the bank transfers showing he was draining the accounts dry. I hit send. I turned to Prescott. Phase 3 is active, I said. Now we wait for the scream. It didn't take long. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. It was a notification from the hacked security cameras inside my parents' house. I opened the app. Millicent was standing in the living room holding her iPad. She looked aged. Her face was drawn. Her shoulders slumped. She picked up her phone when it chimed. She frowned. She tapped the screen. I watched her body language. She froze. Her hand went to her mouth. She stood up so abruptly she knocked over her cucumber water. She stared at the phone, shaking her head violently, as if trying to deny what her eyes were seeing and her ears were hearing. Then she screamed. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated devastation. It was the sound of a woman watching her future evaporate. She collapsed. Her knees just gave out. She hit the floor in a heap of white terry cloth. Staff members came running. Other patrons stood up, alarmed. I watched the chaos for a moment. I watched them fan her face. I watched them call for water. I felt a twinge of pity. Just a twinge. It was small and faint, like a dying ember. She was my mother. She had given birth to me, but she had also thrown me away. She had sided with the wolf because she liked the fur coat he promised her. Now the wolf had bitten her hand off. I turned back to the screen showing Garrison. He was whistling as he packed his bag, oblivious to the fact that his escape route had just been detonated. He thought he was the player. He didn't realize he was just another piece on my board. I picked up my phone and dialed Agent Prescott. "He's packing," I said. "He's heading to the airport in an hour. He just confessed to wire fraud and money laundering on tape. I sent you the file." "Received," Prescott said, his voice crisp. "We are moving in. Do you want us to take him at the office?" "No," I said, watching Garrison zip up the duffel bag full of stolen cash. "Let him get to the car. Let him think he made it. I want the takedown to be public. I want him to feel the hope die." "Understood," Prescott said. "And Serafina? Nice work." I hung up. I poured myself another cup of coffee. The caffeine hummed in my veins. 2 down, 1 to go. My father, Aldrich, was currently at the church preparing his sermon for tomorrow. He was probably praying for a miracle. He was probably praying for the land sale to go through. He had no idea that his wife was unconscious on a spa floor, that his son-in-law was about to be tackled by the FBI, and that his bank account was currently being frozen by the federal government. He wanted a miracle. I was going to give him a revelation. I opened the file labeled Sunday Service. I checked the projector schematics for the church sanctuary. I checked the audio system access codes. I checked the schedule. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Bishop Aldrich Caldwell was going to preach about forgiveness. I was going to preach about retribution. And I wasn't going to need a microphone. The fluorescent lights of the hospital recovery room hummed with a sound that felt like a drill boring directly into my mother's skull. Millicent Caldwell opened her eyes, and for a merciful second, she didn't remember. She stared at the acoustic ceiling tiles and wondered why the Egyptian cotton sheets of her bed felt so scratchy and smelled like antiseptic. Then the memory of the video crashed into her mind with the force of a freight train. Garrison. The safe. The cash. The laughter. Screw my wife. I'm taking everything. She sat up so fast the heart monitor screamed in protest. Her purse was on the bedside table. She grabbed it, dumping the contents onto the stiff hospital blanket until she found her phone. Her hands were shaking so violently she dropped it twice before she could unlock the screen. She dialed Garrison. Straight to voicemail. She dialed the offshore banker in the Caymans, a number Garrison had given her for emergencies only. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." She logged into the joint bank app, the one that was supposed to hold the church building fund and their retirement savings. Balance, $0. Pending transaction. Wire transfer to GM Global. Status, completed. A guttural sound escaped her throat. A noise somewhere between a sob and a retch. He had done it. The man she had paraded around the country club. The son-in-law she had praised while spitting on her own daughter. He had picked them clean. The villa in Nice was gone. The yacht was gone. The mansion would be foreclosed on in a month. She was 58 years old, and she was destitute. Panic clawed at her throat. She needed Aldrich. Surely Aldrich had a backup plan. Surely the bishop had a rainy day fund hidden in a hollowed-out Bible somewhere. She called her husband. "Aldrich, pick up," she whispered, her voice raspy. "Pick up, pick up, pick up." "What is it, Millicent?" Aldrich's voice barked through the phone. He sounded out of breath, frantic. "I am busy. The deacons are asking questions about the building fund. I need Garrison to send over the ledger." "Garrison is gone, Aldrich." Millicent screamed into the phone, hysteria taking over. "He's gone. He took the money. He took all of it. The safe is empty. The accounts are zero. I saw a video, Aldrich. Serafina sent me a video. He laughed at us. He called you an old fool." "Stop it," Aldrich snapped. "Stop being hysterical. Garrison wouldn't do that. He's family. Serafina is lying. It's a deep fake or whatever they call it. She's trying to confuse you. It wasn't a fake." Millicent sobbed. "I checked the bank. Aldrich, the money is gone. We are broke. We are going to prison." There was a silence on the line so profound it felt like the phone had died. Then Aldrich spoke, his voice low and dangerous. If the money is gone, then we have only one option left. We need that land. We need to sell that land to the developers by Monday, or we are finished. Get Serafina on the phone now. She blocked me. Millicent cried. She won't talk to me. Use a hospital phone, Aldrich ordered. Play the victim. Tell her you're dying. I don't care what you say. Just get her to the church tomorrow. If I can get her in front of the congregation, I can break her. I can make her sign. Do it, Millicent. Or don't bother coming home. The line went dead. Millicent stared at the phone. Her husband didn't care that she had fainted. He didn't care that their life was over. He only cared about the deal. She looked at the hospital room phone on the wall. It was her last play. Her Hail Mary. I sat in my penthouse office, watching the sun dip below the Charlotte skyline, turning the glass buildings into pillars of fire. My phone rang. Unknown number. Location. Mercy General Hospital. I knew who it was. I had been waiting for this call. I picked up. Hello? Serafina. The voice on the other end was broken, unrecognizable. It was the sound of a woman who had looked into the abyss and found it staring back. Serafina, baby, it's Mom. Hello, Millicent, I said, my voice cool and even. Please don't hang up, Millicent begged. She was weeping openly now. Loud, wet sobs that echoed in the hospital room. You were right. You were right about everything. Garrison, he's a devil. He took the money, Serafina. He took the building fund. He took Dad's pension. He left us with nothing. I know, I said, taking a sip of sparkling water. I watched him do it. Help us, Millicent pleaded. Please, Serafina. You have money. You have connections. You can stop him. You can get the money back. We are your parents. We raised you. You can't let us end up on the street. Dad is talking about selling the house, but it won't be enough to cover the debts. They'll arrest him, Serafina. They'll arrest your father. I leaned back in my leather chair. I looked at the leather binder sitting on my desk. The $400,000 invoice Aldrich had handed me. You want me to save you? I asked. Yes, Millicent cried. Yes, baby, please. We're family. Let's look at the ledger, I said, my voice sharpening. You handed me an invoice yesterday, Mom. $400,000. Do you remember what was on page 42? What? Millicent stammered, confused. I don't know. It was a line item for emotional distress, I said. Dad charged me $5,000 for the stress I caused you when I dropped my ice cream cone at Disney World in 1999. Do you remember that? Serafina, please, Millicent wailed. Well, I have done some calculations of my own, I continued. And I think the emotional distress fee for abandoning your daughter, letting your husband humiliate her, and trying to steal her inheritance is a bit higher than $5,000. In fact, I think it costs exactly everything you have left. Serafina, don't be cruel, Millicent whispered. This isn't you. You're a good girl. I was a good girl, I corrected. Now I'm a solvent girl, and you are a bankrupt girl. Garrison is gone, Mom. The money is gone, and I am not a bank. I am an auditor, and I have found your account lacking. But what do we do? Millicent asked, her voice small and terrified, like a child in the dark. You figure it out, I said, just like you told me to figure it out when you left me in the rain. Sell your jewelry, sell your designer dresses, get a job. I hear the Waffle House is hiring night shift. You can't do this, Millicent screamed, the anger returning as the desperation failed. You owe us. I don't owe you a damn thing, I said. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, listening to the silence of my apartment. It didn't feel heavy. It felt light. It felt like shedding a skin that had been too tight for 30 years. But the game wasn't over. Aldrich was still standing. I turned to my computer monitors. I pulled up the live feed from the security cameras inside Providence Fellowship Church. Aldrich was there. He was standing in the empty sanctuary, pacing back and forth on the pulpit. He looked manic. His tie was undone. His hair was disheveled. He was shouting at an empty room, rehearsing his sermon. They will forgive me, he shouted at the empty pews. his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. They have to forgive me. I am the shepherd. I am the bishop. It wasn't my fault. It was the devil. It was Garrison. It was Serafina. He stopped pacing. He looked up at the stained glass window. I need a miracle, Lord, he whispered. I need a sacrifice. He pulled out his phone. He started typing a mass text message. I watched the text appear on my screen as he typed it, intercepted by my software. To all church members. From Bishop Aldrich. Urgent. Emergency service of reconciliation tomorrow at 10 a.m. We are facing a spiritual attack. The enemy has stolen from our treasury, but God has revealed a path to restoration. My daughter Serafina will be there to confess her part in this tribulation and to offer a seed of faith to restore the house of God. Bring your checkbooks. The Lord loves a cheerful giver. I stared at the message. He was insane. He was actually going to try it. He was going to blame the theft on me, or Garrison, but frame it as a spiritual attack and then pressure the congregation to donate more money to cover the loss. And he was going to try to ambush me. He thought if he announced I would be there, I would be pressured to show up to clear my name. He thought he could use the peer pressure of 500 people to force me to sign the land deed. He wanted a show. He wanted a confession. I smiled. A slow, cold smile that didn't reach my eyes. You want Serafina to appear, Bishop? I whispered to the screen. You want a sacrifice? Okay, I'll come. I picked up my phone and texted Agent Prescott. The target is organizing a gathering tomorrow morning. I wrote, 10 a.m. He's going to solicit funds to cover up the embezzlement. It's wire fraud in real time. We'll be ready, Prescott replied instantly. Do you want us to shut it down before it starts? No, I typed back. Let him start. Let him get on that stage. Let him tell his lies. I want everyone to hear them. I want the choir to hear them. I want the deacons to hear them. I am coming to church, I added, and I'm bringing the receipts. I stood up and walked to my closet. I pushed aside the gray suits, the sensible cardigans, the good girl clothes I had worn to try and please them. I reached into the back and pulled out a garment bag. I unzipped it. Inside was a white suit. Not off-white, not cream. Pure, blinding, stark white. Italian silk, sharp shoulders, wide legs. It was a power suit. It was the kind of suit a woman wore when she was about to take over a boardroom or burn down an empire. I ran my hand over the fabric. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be Serafina the disappointment. I wouldn't be Serafina the scapegoat. Tomorrow, I was the angel of death, and Bishop Aldrich was about to meet his maker. The air inside the sanctuary of Providence Fellowship Church was stale, recycled, and thick with the scent of desperation. 500 people were packed into the pews, fanning themselves with glossy programs that bore my father's smiling face. The local news crews were set up in the back, their camera lights cutting through the haze like searchlights in a prison yard. I stood in the vestibule, watching the feed on my phone, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. This was it, the final act. On the raised pulpit, my father, Bishop Aldrich Caldwell, was giving the performance of a lifetime. He wasn't wearing his usual Sunday best. He had chosen a simple black suit. His tie loosened, his hair artfully disheveled to suggest a man who had been wrestling with angels all night. He gripped the sides of the podium, leaning forward, his voice a ragged baritone that vibrated in the floorboards. My brothers, my sisters. Aldrich groaned into the microphone, wiping genuine sweat from his brow. We are in the valley of the shadow today. The enemy is at the gates. This ministry, this family, we are under a siege of spiritual wickedness. Amens rippled through the crowd, soft and sympathetic. They bought it. They bought the tired eyes and the trembling hands. They didn't know the trembling was terror, not piety. My own daughter, Aldrich continued, his voice cracking perfectly on the word. Serafina, the child I raised, the child I fed. She has allowed the spirit of greed to twist her heart. She has come to me with threats. She demands money. She demands payment for her silence. She holds our family hostage with lies and legal trickery. He paused, looking out over the crowd, locking eyes with the wealthiest donors in the front row. I have prayed for her, Aldrich shouted, his voice rising. I have wept for her. But the devil does not sleep, and neither can we. We are facing a financial crisis because of this attack. The church accounts have been frozen by the enemy to stop our good work. And now I must ask you, the faithful, to stand in the gap. He gestured to the ushers who stepped forward with velvet collection buckets. We need a seed of faith, Aldrich pleaded. We need a miracle offering to pay the lawyers, to save the land, to save this house from the wolves who want to tear it down. I am asking for everything you can give. Empty your pockets. Write the check. Help me save my daughter from herself. I watched on my screen as people reached for their wallets. Elderly women opening purses. Businessmen pulling out checkbooks. He was robbing them in broad daylight, using my name as the weapon. It was time. I looked at Agent Prescott on my right. He adjusted his FBI windbreaker and nodded. I looked at Director Thornton of the IRS on my left. He checked his watch and snapped his briefcase shut. Let's go to church, I said. I pushed open the heavy double doors. Boom. The sound of the doors hitting the back walls echoed like a gunshot. The organ player faltered. The ushers froze. Every single head in the room turned. The collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. I didn't walk in looking like the mousy accountant they remembered. I walked in wearing the white power suit. It was blinding, stark, architectural Italian wool that fit like armor. My hair was slicked back, sharp and severe. My lips were painted a deep blood red. I didn't look like a daughter coming to apologize. I looked like a reckoning. I started down the center aisle. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor with a sound that cut through the silence. Click, click, click. It was the sound of a countdown. Behind me, the flank of federal agents moved in formation, a wave of dark blue and gray crashing into the sanctuary. The camera crews swung their lenses away from the pulpit and onto me. Aldrich stopped speaking. The microphone dipped in his hand. His eyes bulged. He looked from me to the FBI agents, and I saw the blood drain from his face until he looked like a wax figure melting under the stage lights. Serafina, he croaked, his voice amplified and distorted by the speakers. I didn't stop. I kept my eyes locked on him. I walked past my mother, Millicent, in the front row. She stood up, her hand reaching out, her face a mask of horror. Serafina, baby, don't, Millicent whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't even blink. I walked past her like she was a statue. I reached the steps of the stage. 2 deacons, big men who doubled as security, stepped forward to block me. They looked uncertain, glancing back at Aldrich for orders. Agent Prescott stepped in front of me. He didn't raise his voice. He just opened his jacket, revealing the gold badge and the holstered sidearm. Federal agents, Prescott announced, his voice carrying to the balcony. Step aside. This is a federal investigation. Interference is a felony. The deacons parted like the Red Sea. I walked up the steps. I stood next to my father. He smelled of fear, a sour metallic scent that cut through his expensive cologne. He was shaking so hard the water in the glass on the pulpit rippled. What? What are you doing? Aldrich hissed, covering the mic with his hand. You promised to fix this. I smiled. It was cold. It was sharp. I'm fixing it, Dad, I whispered. I reached out and took the microphone from his hand. He didn't fight me. He couldn't. He was paralyzed. I turned to face the congregation. 500 faces staring back at me. Confusion, fear, curiosity. Good morning, Providence Fellowship, I said. My voice was steady, clear, and loud. The feedback whined for a second, then settled. My father just told you a story, I said. He told you a story about a daughter who is ungrateful, a daughter who is greedy, a daughter who is blackmailing him. I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer. I pulled out the folded piece of paper, the one I had carried with me for 4 days. He told you I owe him, I said. I unfolded the paper. I held it up. On my birthday, my father handed me this invoice, I said. $400,000. He itemized my life. He charged me for my food. He charged me for my clothes. He charged me for the gas used to drive me to school. He told me that if I didn't pay him back for the burden of raising me, I was dead to him. A murmur went through the crowd. Someone shouted, "Say it ain't so, Bishop. He told you the church accounts were frozen by the enemy." I continued, my voice hardening. "He told you he needs your money to fight a spiritual war." I turned and looked at Aldrich. He was slumped in the bishop's chair, his head in his hands. "But the enemy isn't outside these walls," I said. "The enemy is sitting right there. Lies." Aldrich screamed suddenly, lunging up. He grabbed for the mic. "She is possessed. Cut the mic." "Cut the feed." Agent Prescott slammed Aldrich back into the chair. "Sit down," Prescott barked. I didn't flinch. "You wanted me to pay you back, Dad?" I asked, looking down at him. "You wanted $400,000? I signaled to Director Thornton. He stepped forward and placed a thick stack of documents on the pulpit. The thud was heavy, final. "I brought it," I said. "Here is the deed to the land you tried to steal. Here is the title to the car you gave to Cordelia. It's all there." I paused. I leaned into the mic. "But you forgot about the interest," I said. "And the interest rate on betrayal is very high." I pulled the remote from my pocket. I pointed it at the giant projection screen behind the choir loft, the screen Aldrich used to display his donation goals. "I brought the money, Dad," I said. "But I brought something else, too. I brought the receipts." I pressed the button. The screen flickered. The image of the cross disappeared. And in its place, the face of Garrison Monroe appeared, pixelated and grainy, but unmistakable. I looked at the crowd. "You wanted a revelation," I said. "Here it is." The giant LED screen behind the choir loft flickered to life. The image was grainy at first, a security camera angle looking down into a luxury office. But the audio was crystal clear. It boomed through the sanctuary speakers, bouncing off the stained glass windows and filling every corner of the room. The face on the screen was unmistakable. It was Garrison Monroe sitting in his leather chair, holding a tumbler of scotch, laughing into his phone. The congregation went deadly silent. 500 people held their breath. "Old man Aldrich is stupid." Garrison's voice sneered from the screen, magnified to a deafening volume. "He is so desperate to be rich. He just handed me the keys to the vault. I am waiting for a wire transfer of 500 grand. As soon as it hits, Opal baby, we are gone. I am cleaning out the accounts. I am taking everything." On screen, Garrison stood up and walked to his wall safe. The congregation watched in horrified fascination as he spun the dial and started stuffing stacks of cash, their tithes, their offerings, into a duffel bag. "That family is a sinking ship," Garrison continued on the video, tossing in a handful of Rolex watches. "Let the old man rot in prison. Let Cordelia cry to her followers. I am out." The video froze on Garrison's grinning face. For a second, there was absolute silence. Then a sound started in the back of the room, a low rumble that grew into a roar. It was the sound of betrayal. Garrison Monroe stood in the front row, his face draining of all color until he looked like a sheet of paper. He looked at the screen. Then he looked at the FBI agents blocking the aisle. He looked at Cordelia, who was staring at him with her mouth open, her phone slipping from her hand. You stole it?" Cordelia whispered, her voice picked up by the lapel mic I was still holding. "You stole the money." "I didn't steal it," Garrison shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "It's a deep fake. It's AI. Serafina made it up. She's a witch. Don't believe your eyes." But I wasn't done. I pressed the button on the remote again. The screen changed. The video of Garrison vanished, replaced by a spreadsheet, a forensic accounting ledger. "Garrison is a thief," I said, my voice cutting through the rising noise of the crowd. "But he learned from the best. He learned from the shepherd, who was supposed to be guarding the flock." I pointed the remote. The screen zoomed in. "This is the main operating account for the Providence Fellowship Charity Fund," I explained. "Last year, you raised $2 million for the new youth center. You all gave sacrificially. You gave your widows' mites. You gave your retirement savings." I clicked the button. A red line appeared on the spreadsheet tracing the money. "But the money didn't go to a youth center," I said. "It was transferred here. to a private holding company called AC Lifestyle. I clicked again. A photo appeared next to the spreadsheet. It was a receipt for a customized Bentley Continental GT. Price tag, $300,000. And here, I said, a receipt for a penthouse lease in Midtown, not for the bishop, but for a Ms. Jasmine Wentworth. The air in the room changed instantly. It went from shocked to electric. Jasmine Wentworth? A voice shouted from the balcony. That's the choir director. Heads whipped around. In the choir loft, a young woman in a robe stood up, looking terrified. She dropped her hymnal and bolted for the back exit. But the damage was done. Millicent stood up in the front row. She was trembling so hard her hat was shaking. She looked at the screen. She looked at the receipt for the apartment. She looked at Aldrich. "Jasmine," she whispered, "you told me she was your spiritual mentee. You told me you were counseling her." I clicked the button again. A stream of text messages appeared on the screen. Messages between Bishop Aldrich and Jasmine. "Can't wait to see you, baby," Aldrich had written. "The old ball and chain is going to a spa day. I'll bring the champagne." Millicent let out a sound that wasn't human. It was a wail of pure agony. She lunged at Aldrich. She clawed at his face, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his cheeks. "You devil!" she screamed. "You liar! You told me we were broke because of the economy. You told me we had to sacrifice, and you were buying her condos." Aldrich shoved Millicent back into the pew. He looked wild. His hair was sticking up. Blood was welling on his cheek where she had scratched him. "It's a lie," he shouted into the dead microphone, his voice raw. "The devil is testing me. Serafina is the devil. Look at her. Look at the suit. She is the whore of Babylon." I ignored him. I clicked the button one last time. The screen changed to a document, a simple handwritten document on legal pad paper. It was scanned in high resolution. "And this," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a scream. "This is the invoice." The document filled the screen. Every petty line item was visible to the back row. Groceries, 1998-2010, $42,000. Electricity usage, prorated, $8,000. Christmas gifts, approximate value, $12,000. Interest, compounded daily, $150,000. Total due, $400,000. I walked to the edge of the stage. I looked down at the faces of the people who had judged me for years. The aunts who had called me cheap, the cousins who had mocked my old car, the deacons who had refused to look me in the eye. "My father gave me this on my birthday," I said. "He told me that my life had a price tag. He told me that raising me was a burden, a bad investment that he wanted to recoup. He told me that unless I paid him $400,000, I was not his daughter." I looked at Aldrich, who was wiping blood from his face, panting like a trapped animal. "He didn't want a daughter," I said. "He wanted an ATM. He wanted a scapegoat. He wanted someone to pay for his Bentley and his mistress and his greed. And when I couldn't pay, he tried to destroy me." I held up the leather binder. "Well, Dad," I said, "I processed your invoice, and I found some discrepancies." I tossed the heavy binder off the stage. It hit the floor at Aldrich's feet with a heavy thud, loud as a gavel strike. "Audit complete," I said. That was the spark. The sanctuary exploded. It wasn't a service anymore. It was a riot. "Get him!" a man shouted from the back. "That's my grandmother's pension money." "Thief!" a woman screamed, throwing her purse at the stage. "You stole from God." Garrison Monroe saw the mood shift. He saw the angry faces turning toward him. He panicked. He bolted. He shoved Cordelia aside, knocking her into the pew, and scrambled over the railing of the choir loft, trying to make it to the side exit. "Get him!" Agent Prescott shouted. The two FBI agents moved with terrifying speed. They tackled Garrison halfway up the aisle. He went down hard, his face hitting the carpet. "Get off me!" Garrison screamed, kicking and thrashing. "I have rights. I have money. I'll sue you. You have the right to remain silent," Prescott said, hauling him up and slamming him against the wall to cuff him. "And you definitely don't have money. We seized your accounts this morning." At the front of the church, Aldrich was trying to maintain control. He climbed back onto the pulpit, grabbing the stand with both hands. "Order," he bellowed, blood and sweat dripping down his face. "I command order in the house of God. Security, remove her, remove the witch." But the security guards, the big deacons who had blocked my path earlier, didn't move. They were staring at the screen. They were staring at the receipts. One of them took off his earpiece and threw it on the ground. "I quit, Bishop," the head of security said. "You bought a Bentley with the roof repair fund. My mama gave $1,000 to that fund." He spit on the floor near Aldrich's shoes and walked away. The crowd surged forward. They weren't coming for communion. They were coming for blood. A hymnal flew through the air and hit Aldrich in the shoulder. Then another. A woman in a Sunday hat took off her shoe and threw it, hitting him square in the chest. "Liar," the crowd chanted. "Liar. Thief. Adulterer." Millicent sat in the front pew, staring blankly at the chaos. She didn't move as the crowd surged around her. She looked like a doll that had been broken and discarded. Her husband was a cheat. Her son-in-law was a criminal. Her daughter Cordelia was screaming at the police, trying to explain that she was just an influencer and didn't know anything about wire fraud. And me, her scapegoat, her disappointment. I was the one standing tall in white, watching it all burn. Aldrich looked at the crowd. Then he looked at me. His eyes were wide with terror. He realized, for the first time, that his charisma couldn't save him. His title couldn't save him. "Serafina," he screamed over the roar of the crowd. "Serafina, stop them. Tell them it's a mistake. I'm your father. I gave you life. Honor thy father. It's a commandment." I walked back to the microphone. I waited. The crowd quieted down just a fraction, wanting to hear what I would say. "Honor thy father," I repeated, my voice amplified and calm. I looked at the invoice lying on the floor. "You honored money, Dad," I said. "You honored greed. You honored yourself. You broke every commandment you preached. You stole. You lied. You coveted. And you bore false witness against your own child." Aldrich gripped the pulpit, his knuckles white. "I am the anointed one," he hissed, his eyes crazy. "You can't touch me. God is on my side." I signaled to Director Thornton of the IRS. He stepped onto the stage, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. He walked up to the pulpit. He placed a hand on Aldrich's shoulder. "Aldrich Caldwell," Thornton said, loud enough for the mic to pick up. "You are under arrest for tax evasion, grand larceny, money laundering, and wire fraud." "No," Aldrich shrieked, pulling away. "You can't arrest a bishop in his own church." "Sanctuary. I claim sanctuary." "There is no sanctuary for thieves," Thornton said. The officers grabbed him. They spun him around. They pulled his arms behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the room. Aldrich struggled. He kicked. He looked ridiculous and small, stripped of his power. "Serafina," he screamed as they began to drag him down the steps. "Serafina, how could you? I am your flesh and blood. I am your daddy. You ungrateful, wretched girl. How dare you?" I walked to the edge of the stage. I looked down at him as the police hauled him past me. Our eyes met. His were filled with hate. Mine were filled with nothing. "You asked for payment, Aldrich," I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the water in the baptismal pool. "You tallied up every dollar you spent on me. You put a price on my childhood." I leaned down close, so he wouldn't miss a word. "You wanted to settle the account," I said. "Well, I settled it. You spent $400,000 raising me, and I just spent 3 years building the case that put you in prison." I stood up straight, smoothing my white suit. "I'd say we are even." The police dragged him out. The crowd parted, booing and shouting as he was hauled up the aisle. Garrison was dragged out behind him weeping. Cordelia was being led out by a female officer, still trying to fix her hair. Millicent remained in the pew, alone, in the wreckage of her life. She looked up at me. Her eyes were empty holes. "Serafina," she whispered. "What about me?" I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had watched me drown and complained that I was splashing water on her shoes. "You have the gumbo, Mom," I said. "Enjoy it." I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a deafening thud. I turned my back on the pulpit. I turned my back on the cross that Aldrich had hidden his crimes behind. I walked down the side stairs. Agent Prescott opened the side door for me. Sunlight streamed in, blinding and bright. I walked out of the church. I walked out of the shadow. And for the first time in 30 years, I didn't look back. The gavel hit the wood with a sound that felt like a thunderclap, ending a long and violent storm. In the federal courthouse in downtown Charlotte, the air was thick with the scent of floor wax and ruin. I sat in the back row, watching the final act of the tragedy my family had written for themselves. Aldrich Caldwell and Garrison Monroe stood before the judge in matching orange jumpsuits. The expensive Italian suits were gone. The gold watches were gone. The arrogance that had fueled them for decades had evaporated, leaving behind two small, terrified men shackled at the waist. The judge, a woman with eyes like flint, didn't waste time on speeches. She looked at the mountains of evidence the FBI had compiled. She looked at the forensic accounting of the stolen charity funds. She looked at the wire fraud charges. 10 years, she said, her voice echoing in the silent room. For each of you, without the possibility of parole. Aldrich slumped against the defense table. He looked back at the gallery, searching for someone to save him. He looked for his deacons, but the pews were empty. He looked for his political friends, but they had abandoned him the moment the handcuffs clicked. Finally, his eyes found mine. "Serafina," he mouthed. "Help me." I didn't blink. I didn't smile. I just watched. It was the same look he had given me when he handed me a bill for $400,000 on my birthday. It was a transactional look. A look that said, "You are a resource to be used." The marshals grabbed his arms. They hauled him away. He didn't look like a bishop anymore. He looked like a bad investment. Garrison followed him, weeping openly, begging for a deal that no one was offering. The heavy oak doors swung shut behind them, sealing their fate. I stood up. I smoothed my skirt. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright Charlotte sunshine. The humidity hit me, but for the first time in my life, it didn't feel oppressive. It felt like a fresh start. The fallout was swift and brutal. It was a domino effect of destruction that I watched from the comfort of my penthouse. My mother, Millicent, was the first to fall. With Aldrich in prison and the assets seized by the federal government to pay restitution to the church, the mansion in Eastgate was foreclosed on. I saw the auction listing online, the white velvet sofas, the crystal chandeliers, the art collection she had prized more than her own children. Everything was sold off to the highest bidder. She called me the day the marshals evicted her. I didn't answer. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she had moved into a one-bedroom apartment in a subsidized housing complex on the south side. The air conditioning didn't work. The carpet smelled like cigarettes. She had been forced to sell her remaining jewelry to pay the deposit. The woman who had once sneered at my practical shoes was now taking the bus to a job at a dry cleaner, where she spent her days pressing shirts for the kind of women she used to lunch with. Then there was Cordelia, my sister the star, my sister the influencer. The internet is a cruel place, and it loves a villain. The video of her confession at the police station leaked. The footage of her driving my stolen car surfaced. Her follower count didn't just drop, it plummeted. Her brand deals evaporated overnight. No fashion label wanted to be associated with Grand Theft Auto and family betrayal. She lost her license. She lost her condo, which had been paid for by the slush fund Garrison had set up. Last week, I drove past a diner on the outskirts of the city. I looked through the window. There was Cordelia, wearing a stained apron, pouring coffee for a truck driver. She looked tired. Her roots were showing. She wasn't live streaming. She was working for minimum wage, trying to pay off the fines she owed the court. She looked up and saw my car. For a second, our eyes locked. I saw the envy. I saw the regret. But mostly, I saw the exhaustion of a girl who had never had to work for anything, suddenly realizing how heavy the world actually is. I didn't stop. I kept driving. I was driving my new car, a Porsche 911 Turbo S jet black, paid for in cash. It purred beneath me, a beast of engineering and freedom. I drove away from the city, away from the courthouse, away from the wreckage of the Caldwell family. I drove toward the old neighborhood, toward the church, toward the land that had started this war. I pulled up to the curb behind Providence Fellowship Church. The parking lot was empty. The sign out front was faded. The scandal had decimated the congregation. But the building still stood. I walked around to the back lot. The 5 acres of overgrown grass and weeds that Aldrich and Garrison had been willing to kill for. The land they thought would buy them a villa in France. It was just dirt. But it was my dirt. A construction crew was already there, waiting for me. A large sign was leaning against the fence, ready to be installed. I walked over to the foreman. "Is everything ready?" I asked. "Yes, Miss Caldwell," the foreman said, tipping his hard hat. "The rezoning permits cleared this morning. We break ground on Monday." I looked at the sign. It was beautiful. The Walter Caldwell Center for Children, it read. A safe haven for the abused and forgotten. I wasn't building condos. I wasn't building a monument to greed. I was giving the land back to the city, just like my grandfather had intended. I was building a shelter for kids who had parents like mine. Kids who needed to know that they weren't bills to be paid, but human beings to be loved. I touched the sign. "Grandpa," I whispered. "We did it." I turned back to my car. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from my bank. The final settlement from the church's insurance company regarding the stolen car had cleared. Combined with my savings and the bonuses from my federal contract, I had more money than I could spend in a lifetime. But I wasn't staying in Charlotte. The city felt too small now, too crowded with ghosts. I drove to Douglas International Airport. I didn't go to the economy lot. I pulled up to the private terminal, valeted the Porsche, and walked inside with nothing but a carry-on bag and my passport. I sat in the first-class lounge, sipping a glass of champagne, watching the planes take off. My phone buzzed again. I looked at the screen. It was a text from a new number, but I knew who it was. "Serafina, please. It's Mom. I'm cold." The heat got turned off. "I know I made mistakes, but you can't leave me like this. I'm your mother. Just send me $5,000. Just for the heat, please." I stared at the message. I thought about the $400,000 invoice. I thought about the itemized list of my childhood. I thought about the heat being turned off in my heart 30 years ago. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing. It was a beautiful, empty silence where the guilt used to be. I tapped the contact info. I scrolled down to the bottom. Block caller. I confirmed the action. The message disappeared. I stood up and walked to the gate. I boarded the plane, settling into the wide leather seat of 1A. The flight attendant, a young woman with a bright smile, came over with a hot towel and a refill of champagne. "Welcome aboard, Miss Caldwell," she said. "We are cleared for departure to Paris. Is anyone joining you today, or are you traveling alone?" I took the champagne. I looked out the window at the sprawling city of Charlotte disappearing beneath the wing. I looked at the clouds gathering on the horizon, leaving the storm behind me. I took off my sunglasses. I smiled, and this time it reached my eyes. "No," I said. "I am not alone." The flight attendant looked confused, glancing at the empty seat next to me. "I am traveling with my freedom," I said. She smiled, not quite understanding, but sensing the weight of the words. "Well then," she said, "bon voyage." The plane taxied to the runway. The engines roared to life, pushing me back into the seat. As we lifted off, leaving the gravity of the earth behind, I closed my eyes. They wanted me to pay for my existence. They handed me an invoice for the air I breathed, for the food I consumed, for the space I occupied. They thought my life was a debt to be collected. Well, I paid it. I paid it in full. I paid it with their reputation. I paid it with their freedom. I paid it with their future. And the change, I thought, as the plane pierced the clouds and broke into the blinding blue sky above, the change was their destruction. I took a sip of champagne. It tasted like victory, Serafina's journey teaches us that blood does not define family loyalty and respect do. For years, she endured abuse, believing her worth was tied to her parents' approval. Her true liberation came not just from financial success, but from the realization that she owed her abusers nothing, not even forgiveness. By setting boundaries and meticulously documenting the truth, she reclaimed her power. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to fix broken people and start building your own peace. True freedom is realizing you are enough on your own. Have you ever had to cut off toxic family members to save yourself? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice served.